The phrase Green New Deal is nothing new. It was used back in 2007 in an opinion piece published by the New York Times. This article discussed some large-scale changes that need to occur in how energy is supplied in order for us to minimize our dependence on oil and reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we produce. Likewise, New Economics Foundation also used the term in 2008. It discussed pushing for a structural transformation of the regulation of national and international financial systems and major changes to taxation systems, and a sustained program to invest in and deploy energy conservation and renewable energies, coupled with effective demand management. Others have noted that the objectives of a global Green New Deal should be to create jobs and restore the financial system and global economy to health, to put the post-crisis economy on a sustainable path that deals with ecological scarcity and climate instability, and third, to end extreme poverty. To accomplish these goals, it's noted that addressing both the problem of climate change and the problem of economic decline require government leadership and cooperation among governments. These articles highlight the widespread structural changes that such a proposal would push for. Although technically the term is a bit ambiguous, since there is no one single Green New Deal, proposals often seek to address numerous aspects of society, from protecting the environment to changing the economy to addressing poverty. A surge of interest appears to have emerged surrounding the topic, especially with regards to a non-binding resolution advanced by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey in early February. According to NPR, this version of a Green New Deal sets goals for some drastic measures to cut carbon emissions across the economy, from electricity generation to transportation to agriculture. In the process, it aims to create jobs and boost the economy. In that vein, the proposal stresses that it aims to meet its ambitious goals while paying special attention to groups like the poor, disabled, and minority communities that might be disproportionately affected by massive economic transitions like those the Green New Deal calls for. After describing some specific aspects of the Green New Deal, the article notes that the Green New Deal framework combines big climate change-related ideas with a wish list of progressive economic proposals that, taken together, would touch nearly every American and overhaul the economy. Quite a bit of attention has been given to the documents describing the Green New Deal, which produced a number of negative, critical, and even comical responses. These documents include the formal resolution, as well as a brief outline that contained a frequently asked questions component. It's worth noting that the frequently asked questions document has been retracted and is no longer up, although saved versions are still available online. In what follows, I'll try to give a brief overview of how different outlets have covered this topic, and then wrap up by listing some key questions worth considering when making up your mind on this issue. As a side note, for brevity's sake, I'll refer to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as AOC, the Green New Deal as GND, and the document with frequently asked questions as the FAQ. Fox News had a number of articles and videos on this topic. One article reported that labor unions view the GND as vague and potentially dangerous. It also discusses its lack of support, noting that the pushback from union leaders indicates that the progressive proposal has not won over a core element of the liberal base. Concerns are made about the job losses that will surely come from some of the policies in the resolution, and about how work in renewable energy firms have been less generous than the oil and gas sector. The article also brought up a particularly controversial phase in the FAQ, which sought to guarantee economic security even for those unwilling to work. This statement turned out to be particularly controversial, since it was denied by Robert Hockett, an advisor of AOC, during an interview with Tucker Carlson. A separate Fox News article was devoted to covering this error. It opens by claiming that he eventually admitted that an official Green New Deal document posted by Ocasio-Cortez's office contained a guarantee of economic security even for those unwilling to work. However, the article goes on to add that this was only after he went viral in progressive circles for claiming the exact opposite, repeatedly, in an interview with Fox News' Tucker Carlson tonight. It provides links to an article on the Daily Caller and quotes a portion of it, noting that Hackett conceded that he was in the wrong in an email to the Daily Caller News Foundation on Saturday. The Fox News article also brings up the explanation offered by AOC's chief of staff for the controversial statement in the document. He notes that an early draft of a fact that was clearly unfinished and that doesn't represent the GND resolution got published to the website by mistake. One other point is probably worth noting about Hackett's interview with Tucker. Hackett suggested that there were some doctored versions of the GND's FAQ circulating around. This sentiment was also made by AOC in a tweet. However, a different story is told if you ask Mark Dice, a YouTube producer and author, who claims he made a satirical version of the GND, which included things like giving everyone a free massage chair and having people make their coffee from recycled urine. A video of his explains the topic in a bit more detail for those who are interested. There are a few more points worth mentioning from the original Fox News article that I opened with. It also mentions that farting cows were brought up in the FAQ, with a picture subheading noting that these animals have been targeted for potential elimination in the Green New Deal. Such brings up a potentially embarrassing or comical phrase, which could incline people to not take the document seriously. The article also discusses the politics of the GND, noting how some 2020 Democratic contenders have responded to it with support, despite the confusion as to its precise content. Such is portrayed as an uninformed decision since they're supporting something even though, according to White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, they aren't really sure what it is. An additional quote paints Democrats as divided on this issue and Republicans as united, highlighting the differences between the two parties. The article closes by noting that the Republican National Committee dubbed the Green New Deal as a socialist wish list that would kill at least 1 million jobs and disrupt global trade while costing trillions. In addition to listing the negative economic impact of the GND, a scientific critique also seems to be made. The article says that in 2006, there was a warning from a NASA scientist who said we had 10 years to avert the coming climate catastrophe. This is described as a deadline that has come and gone, and is claimed in conjunction with AOC's statement that the world will end in 12 years if climate change isn't addressed. Although it's not explicitly said, her statement seems to be associated with the false 2006 alarm, potentially leading the reader to be dismissive of the warnings she is giving. In a similar vein, Tucker Carlson also criticized the GND as being anti-science. After listing a number of negative things like the large changes that it would require and the loss of jobs it would produce, he claims, the party of science, apparently referring to Democrats, forgot to consult scientists when they draft a complete rewrite of the American economy. A Hannity news segment also offers a negative portrayal of the GND. He describes it as a radical Green New Deal agenda, which will destroy the lifeblood of our economy and take away air travel and cow meat and the automobile as we know it, and roll back the president's progress and, by the way, give up the single biggest profit center in our energy, which is our energy sector, and nationalize everything. This also included an interview segment which, admittedly, had a lot of interruptions in it. Breitbart was also critical of the GND, with an article discussing its negative impact, claiming that the resolution still contained plenty of eye-rolling insanities, such as destroying the American industrial base to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions within 10 years. The consequence of this policy, it is suggested, is that it would cost trillions of dollars, shove the U.S. economy back into an uncompetitive Stone Age, end the standard of living middle-class Americans have grown accustomed to, and cause incredible amounts of environmental damage. It's also criticized for going far beyond simply helping the environment. The resolution introduced on Thursday was still packed with all kinds of madcap social justice spending that had nothing whatsoever to do with the environment. It also highlights how the now retracted FAQ advanced the idea of economic security to all those who are unable or unwilling to work. Later on it notes that, while the red alert language about providing economic security for those who refuse to work has been clipped, The resolution does still conclude by demanding affordable housing and economic security for all people of the United States, which would logically include people who can work but refuse to do so. It also notes the resolution's goal to promote justice and equity in a number of different aspects of society. From this, it concludes that, in short, the resolution introduced by Markey and Ocasio-Cortez is still a terrifying socialist power grab wrapped in a thin layer of green lunacy. It remains as the fact described it, a massive transformation of our society. The plan as a whole does not become significantly less deranged, impractical, or contrary to American democracy because the howlers about eliminating cow flatulence and paying people not to work have been removed. The point seems to be that retracting the fact doesn't do away with some of the extreme and ultimately harmful claims that it makes. Many of them are still present in the formal resolution, albeit in different language. The extensive nature of the GND that pushes it far beyond simply protecting the environment is also echoed in another article, which says that the plan goes far beyond energy to urge national health care coverage and job guarantees, as well as high-quality education and affordable housing. Towards the end, it quotes one person who called the plan a socialist manifesto that lays out a laundry list of government giveaways, including guaranteed food, housing, college, and economic security, even for those who refuse to work. It also paints it as absurd, noting that an outline and fact for the proposal includes several jaw-dropping action items, including the eventual elimination of necessary air travel and economic security to all those who are unable or unwilling to work. The cost of implementing this resolution is also discussed, with Democrats portrayed as silent on the matter. As the article puts it, while Democrats did not specify a price tag, some Republicans predict it would cost in the trillions of dollars. Republican lawmakers denounced the plan as a radical proposal that would drive the economy off a cliff and lead to a huge tax increase. As a result, some, including the president, seem to think that this will work in favor of Republicans. As one article puts it, Republicans are thrilled at the prospect of their rivals embracing a policy that promises to wipe out massive portions of the American economy, and the president is no exception. A handful of other articles also discussed the broader political aspects of the GND. As one article puts it, it's pure socialism. It also makes a scientific critique saying that it makes a handful of speculative claims that even scientists who endorse anthropogenic global warming are hesitant to endorse. In short, the Green New Deal is a document worthy of a 19th century communist manifesto or a 21st century undergraduate student council resolution. It presents claims unsupported by scientific evidence, makes demands for every benefit imaginable, and has no idea how to build or pay for any of it. Another outlet I examined was the Huffington Post. One article refers to the GND as a landmark resolution that ambitiously seeks to zero out planet warming emissions and restore the middle-class prosperity of post-war America that the original New Deal helped spur. The political leanings of it are acknowledged, with the article saying that unabashedly progressive ideals anchor the resolution. This is reflected in the numerous issues that it attempts to address. Nevertheless, it's also said that the resolution seems designed for broad appeal. Interestingly, while the charge of socialism is used to critique the resolution in other articles, that is not the case here. As one person puts it, this is how green socialists will govern. It will be thoughtful, it will be politically pragmatic, and it will still be ambitious. Some of the opposition of the GND is also discussed, which is likely to arise because it poses an existential threat to entrenched, deep-pocketed industries that donate to Democrats. Building a constituency powerful enough to change fossil fuel producers, automakers, and utilities requires support from the labor movement. There are also economic difficulties that the article brings up when it points out that fossil fuel infrastructure is a reliable source of lucrative contract jobs. To address the loss of these jobs, it's said that the Green New Deal mobilization creates high-quality union jobs that pay prevailing wages, hire local workers, offer training and advancement opportunities, and guarantee wage and benefit parity for workers affected by the transition. Granted, concerns still may exist since renewable energy jobs tend to pay less and use fewer unionized workers than pipeline or coal train gigs. The article notes that the GND can try to address concerns about wage decreases by strengthening labor laws that allow workers to organize, unionize, and collectively bargain. This brief exchange of ideas concedes that the GND has some potential drawbacks. However, they can be remedied by making further changes to society. This not only reflects how certain endeavors can have a ripple effect on society, but it also introduces new changes which may be controversial in their own right. One pattern I also noticed at the Huffington Post was the support that the GND received. For example, one article describes how conservation groups are applauding the measure's language. Towards the end it says that ocean conservation nonprofit Oceana is among the many groups to celebrate the introduction of the Green New Deal last week. Protecting oceans, as the resolution calls for, is a no-brainer. The aspirations of the GND are also contrasted with how Trump has treated the environment. The article notes that a large-scale effort to protect and restore wild spaces would be a grand departure from the last 2 years. It supports this claim by listing some of the anti-conservation actions the Trump administration has undertaken. The popularity of and opposition towards the GND is also highlighted. As the article puts it, the Green New Deal is wildly popular among both Republican and Democratic voters. Still, Republican lawmakers have been quick to dismiss it as a top-down and impossible proposal. Another article also points out some important support that the GND has from Tom Suozzi, who apparently holds some influential positions. He called the project daunting, but said in a Facebook post, "The real question is, can we afford not to enact the Green New Deal?" The ideas advanced within the GND are portrayed as taking science seriously. It is dramatically shifting the terms of the climate policy debate toward the kind of government action scientists say matches the scale of the problem. A little bit is mentioned about the controversies surrounding the proposal and the FAQ, which AOC had released. The article does point out that the facts seem to contradict some aspects of the resolution, although not much more is said on the matter, at least not to the extent of other articles. This article was also not particularly critical of the terminology that the FAQ had employed. More is said about the popularity of the GND, which is reflected in the speed with which Democrats are lining up to support the resolution. A December poll is also cited in which 81% of surveyed registered voters said they support its aims, including 64% of Republicans and 57% of conservative Republicans. With that said, the Huffington Post coverage suggests that some Republicans are attacking the GND. One congressman claims that a top-down approach may not be the best way to address climate change. It's noted, however, that this person, less than a decade ago, deployed Bible verses to dismiss the realities of climate science. Appealing to this person's use of religion may be intended to discredit or undermine his views. By means of contrast, it's noted that scientists quickly praised the idea of a Green New Deal as the first policy on the scale of the climate crisis. Such portrays its ambitious goals as aligned with what science says. Additionally, it portrays Republicans in Congress who opposed the GND as somewhat out of touch with what people think about it. According to the article, despite years of partisan bickering over the realities of climate change, the idea proved popular. It then goes on to cite a previously mentioned poll, which shows a majority of support from both Republicans and conservative Republicans. The article also aims at addressing incorrect statements made about the GND, highlighting the way in which it's misrepresented. The topic of how the GND is represented can be seen in an article that discusses a dismissive comment made by Judge Jeanine Pirro about the topic of cow farts. The article notes that, despite Pirro's attempt to mock the plan, a 2011 United Nations report found that methane produced by livestock is responsible for nearly 40% of greenhouse gases emitted by the agricultural industry. By way of summary, There seem to be some points where disagreements arise, and there are some points which are emphasized more than others. One key question centers on, what does the science say? Whereas some articles viewed the large-scale changes demanded by the GND as in line with the bleak outlook that science paints, others seemed a bit more skeptical about whether these scientific claims are trustworthy. One can also find differences when it comes to what the economic impact of the GND will be. While some see it as having a positive impact, or portray any potential negative outcomes as manageable, others see it as wreaking havoc on the economy. There are also those who critique the widespread impact of it, seeing it as moving towards socialism and placing more control in the government's hands. Others, however, may see it as utilizing the government to play a vital role in bringing about the ambitious goal of transforming our society for the better. There is also the question of popular opinion. It was common for some Huffington Post articles to cite polls which showed that people supported the GND. This point typically was not made or highlighted by Fox News or Breitbart. There also seemed to be a difference in focus when it comes to the fact that was posted and then later retracted. Some were far more critical of what it said, especially with regards to the claim that we should provide for those who are unwilling to work, than others were. One may also gain a different sense of where the Trump administration stands on environmental issues depending on which articles one reads. While some may paint him as advancing policies which harm the environment, others may say little on the matter. This could also influence how one views the GND with regards to Trump. While some may see it as a way of pushing against the harm he is wreaking on the environment, others may see it as a way of interfering with the strong economy that Trump has created. There's also the issue of whether or not the GND will benefit Trump politically. Some have argued that it is too extreme or silly, and that this may actually work in favor of Trump, as it paints his opposition in a more negative light. In closing, the issues raised by the GND are certainly worthy of our attention and raise important questions about the impact we are having on the environment, what solutions, if any, are needed, and what the role of the government should be in changing society. When formulating an opinion on this matter, a handful of questions are worth considering. The most basic deals with the reality of climate change. Is climate change occurring? And if so, is the change in climate due to human activity? If humans are playing a role in climate change, then it's worth considering what the impacts of climate change are. Will they be harmful, beneficial, or neutral? If they are beneficial or neutral, then one could argue that little change is necessary. If, however, they are harmful, then changes to society should be implemented to mitigate that damage which will occur if we do nothing. This, however, raises the question of what interventions will be effective. In the most general sense, this involves evaluating what solutions, if implemented, will actually work to solve the problems of human-made climate change. Then there is also the more restrictive question of which of these solutions is practically possible. The practical question not only involves things like whether or not a proposed solution is economically plausible, but also involves the act of persuading politicians and people to support and enact whatever changes need to happen. This is a critical step, since even the greatest policy in principle will be ineffective if it can't garner a sufficient portion of the population to actually enact it. Then there is also the question of ripple effects. Large-scale social interventions typically do not occur in a vacuum. A change in one aspect of society is likely to bring about a change in other areas as well. This gives rise to an additional area of controversy which focuses on whether, in trying to help the environment, we will bring about unintended consequences which may have a negative impact on other areas of society. If these unintended consequences do create additional problems, two general approaches can be taken. First, we can simply accept them. This line of thinking would argue that the negative impact of climate change is far worse than the negative consequences brought about by policies aimed at addressing climate change. Just like one is willing to take a drug with bad side effects if, overall, it brings about better health by treating a disease, so we may be willing to accept some negative side effects of social interventions if, on the whole, they help us avoid far more catastrophic outcomes. The second possibility is to take these unintended consequences and implement further changes to society in order to address them. This creates a scenario where a problem gives rise to a social policy to solve it, which in turn gives rise to another problem, which gives rise to another social policy. While in a sense this seems like a reasonable approach, some may caution that it can be difficult to predict the long-term outcomes of this, and it may lead us down a road of further interventions that are controlled by the government, potentially leading to catastrophic outcomes. While a lot more could be said on the matter, hopefully I've given people a sense of some of the different angles on the Green New Deal, and offered a general approach which is useful for thinking about the topic of climate change in general. As always, it's worth keeping in mind that what I say on the matter of media bias and how this topic is covered is very limited in its scope and based only on the few articles that I have read. With that said, I hope this has at least offered some insights into thinking about this issue. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.